So I had an interesting experience middle of last year. The tvOS I had been talking about, writing about very frequently, and I realized very, very important piece of technology. I created a class all about it called Getting to Grips with TV Platforms, and available from the nScreenMedia website. Please stop by. Well, 6 months later, 3 new tvOSs had entered the market. And I had to completely revise my class, so it is brand new and just completely revised. And you have to ask yourself, why? Why are so many companies still entering a market that is pretty densely populated with companies, right? Why would they be entering the market? Well, I will tell you why. The US television market was worth $227 billion in 2024. $227 billion. By the end of the decade, most of it will funnel through the tvOS. That money is already beginning to transfer in pretty much all markets. It is creating large companies out of tvOS providers. Roku, for example, earned $4.1 billion last year, the vast majority of which came from its platform business, which is where the tvOS resides, and of course the very important Roku channel, which I'm sure will come up as we talk. And Vizio, which we've already spoken about earlier, which was purchased by Walmart. Vizio pivoted from just TV sales to pretty much the same model as Roku about 2 years ago. They've already built a $700 million business doing this. That is why so many people are piling into the tvOS business, and that is why you should congratulate yourselves for sticking around for this panel, because we're going to understand a lot of the dynamics of the market from a very fine group of individuals who know well how the market functions. So I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves, and then we'll get into the questions. So why don't we start all the way on the end with you, Gabriel?
Well, can you imagine if we brought in all the free beer? We'd have a pub.
Which would be very good.
Would be very, open the doors. Gabriel Cosgrave, so I work for Xperi. I'm the GM of EMEA. So Xperi is made up of TiVo, DTS, HD radio, programs like IMAX Enhance. And yeah, we started about 2 years ago with our Smart TVOS platform under our media platforms business. And it's been going pretty well, which I'll talk about.
Very good. Teresa?
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Teresa Lopez. I'm here today representing WhaleTV. We're proud to be the global leading independent tvOS with 43 million monthly active TVs in across 200 countries. The large part of that footprint is across Europe and LATAM, where we focus our growth strategy. However, we also continue to steadily expand into APAC and MENA. I look after WhaleTV Plus operations, which is our owned and operated AVOD fast streaming service, a product that enables all content partners to distribute their channels to global audiences. And I don't know if Maria or anyone from Ondia is here right now, but we need to do some tweaks to those slides that were shown before. That's my last comment.
I thought at least one of you would have something to say about that slide. Sally, please introduce yourself.
Sure, I'm Sally Nelson from Roku, as mentioned. So hopefully many of you know who we are. For those who may not, Roku is the #1 streaming OS in the US, Canada, and Mexico. We have more than 90 million streaming households around the globe. And my role is basically I look after product for international. So anywhere outside of the US where Roku is, that's my role.
Very good. So why don't we start with you? Talk to us a little bit about how you measure the success of the UX. And I'm not just talking about in financial terms. Financial terms, it's pretty clear how that's happening. But yeah, talk to us a little bit about what the key parameters are that you watch there.
Yeah, certainly. So as mentioned, we have a pretty significant base. So what we spend a lot of time focusing on is how that base responds to enhancements and new features that we launch. So we have a kind of a rigorous process of A/B testing all of our kind of innovations and new features that come along. And I guess the main things that we look at really are whether those things are going to drive up engagement. So we might look at things like streaming hours or the number of days that a particular user might stream for. We'll also look at the impact to our monetization. As you say, we're here to make money as well. And then we're also looking at other things like customer sentiment. So we run a lot of surveys to make sure we understand really what the customers think about the features that we launch and the improvements. And then, of course, we're constantly monitoring things like platform performance and basically making sure that new features don't impact kind of our ability to offer a reliable and snappy service.
Gabriel, do you keep an eye on things like time to get to something to watch and those
For
sort
sure,
of
yeah, I
parameters
think
as well?
Yeah, I think two things I would summarize is time to content and amount of time spent viewing, right? So TiVo has gone back, I've got I don't know how many years now, but across 40 million households in our pay TV business, we have a large content discovery for many years that drives that time to content short. And it's not only about short, it's also about recommendations engine. If you're watching sports, the last thing you want to do is search around for sports, is just find what is there and just the UX almost gets out of the way. And then time to spent watching is, as Sally just said, is really about where the monetization pieces that you have to naturally keep an eye on. That's the business we're in. So we really measure, I think to summarize in those two ways is the most important.
Very good.
Yeah.
Teresa, I have been looking at the data, and it really doesn't seem to me like there is a tremendous amount of loyalty to a TV OS from TV purchasers. I have several in my house, and I'm sure everybody does in theirs. What are some of the things that TV OS providers can do that you think can help their TV OS become more of a decision point when somebody goes and buys a TV?
Well, I like to start by saying that I think that if we leave North America out of the equation, there's not necessarily still a lot of TV OS brand awareness out there. In the end of the day, what you're trying to do with the OS is give the user what they want to watch the fastest way as possible. So our proposition is just building on that ease of use, basically. And from our point of view, you need to also make sure that the discovery is working, that everyone just literally, the moment they take the remote control and they, a fair amount of time, and a fair amount of the times, they know where they want to get, so just make sure that they get there quickly. So we at WhaleTV, we used to be white label and invisible, and we changed the strategy, and now are literally working on generating that consumer awareness and to all the stakeholders, whether that's a content partner, a TV brand, and a consumer. But if we're only looking at the end consumer point of view, I think that differentiation used to be before around the content, when the TVs were dumb, let's put it that way. And now that the TVs are smart, a lot of those features play a lot more into the role of that decision-making, purchase-making. And like you said, you are more likely to repeat that purchase if you have one TV brand at home, so that you connect them all. But from our point of view, as an OS, what you can do to differentiate yourself better is build on the UI, build on ease of use, and just basically reduce the friction in the consumer journey when they're interacting with your TV.
Yeah, I think maybe to add, Colin, because it's a great point, the content offerings, whether it's the big SVODs or some of the AVODs or local heroes, has become kind of similar, I don't want to say the same, across different OSs and different platforms. So, TiVo prides itself in a content-centric user interface, which basically then allows a more holistic understanding of the viewing preferences across different sources of content offerings. So that over time creates, in my mind, a loyalty to the OS, because you don't have to go in and out and open apps and all that fun stuff, or not so fun stuff. So that's where I think you will, over time, start to build some of that loyalty towards some of the OSs more so as well as brands of TV.
Yeah, I love the way that in the TiVo OS you have sort of two views. You have one that's very content-centric, personalization and recommendation, and the other one that's more app-centric. Roku's taken a little bit of a different approach. They've deliberately kept things very simple. Big tiles, easy to see. But we have seen some movement over the last, I'd say, 12 months, where you've been adding features that are more content-forward.
Yep.
Talk to us about that.
Yes, certainly. So I think, as you say, one of our main principles is we want to make sure that that experience is super simple. Everything comes back to making sure that that experience is simple, easy to use, easy to understand. But what we are finding is what we want to do is also sort of add more value for that consumer, and as an OS be able to help that consumer get to the content that they're interested in watching, as these guys were saying before. And I think nowadays, particularly with so much content being diversified across sort of a large number of apps, the role of the TV OS in helping people to get to that is becoming even more critical now.
Yeah.
So I think what we're trying to do is look at how can we balance helping people find the content that they want, and they may be in different stages or different sort of use journeys. So for example, somebody may come to our TV and turn it on. They know exactly what the movie or TV program is that they want to watch. They just want to search for it, in which case we need to have a great search experience. We need to have all of the content partners that they care about in it. Or they may come and they don't quite know what they want to watch, and they want to be inspired. So that's where we have to have features like Roku's What to Watch or our Live TV Zone, where we can do really highly personalized recommendations. Because what we're also against is kind of bombarding that user with hundreds of recommendations, so that the user has to basically wade through a whole load of recommendations that just aren't relevant, frankly. So yes, we are starting to bring more content to that experience, but really making sure that it's hyper-personalized and super focused rather than overwhelming, as some customers describe it.
So this issue of search, a universal search, seems to be like a pretty critical additive feature that the TV OS brings to things. They sort of unify the search across a bunch of apps. But one of the problems that I have is that not all the apps are represented. Can universal search do what it needs to do without everybody participating?
Yes.
Yeah.
You need to get a Roku, apparently.
Well, I think everybody participating is the thing, right?
Yeah.
But not everybody will. But I think, there's some stats floating around on the TiVo video trends, which I know you like. That is, I think it's like 73% go in and out of at least one app on during a viewing session. And 48% of them actually complain they don't like that experience. So, and the reason they're going in and out is because of that, it's not fully universal, right? So the more we strive to push that cross sourcing, I call it, cross sources of content that is, whether it's catalogs or metadata or sharing that information, the more that search capabilities become faster, more relevant. To your point, more hyper-personalized becomes a lot easier to do because you're able to find things quicker, and therefore you know more viewing habits more quickly. But there's still time to go on that, I think, right? But it's not far off.
Yeah.
And I think eventually they will join, because I think it's becoming very clear to everybody that universal search is just driving that discovery, and the moment you find something there, you literally redirect the user into the service most of the time. So it would just be insane not to be part of it.
So I didn't plan to ask this question, but just
there we go.
Our discussion of universal search just reminded me. Each of you have your own built-in services, which we're going to talk about a little bit now. Can consumers really trust your universal search to give them a fair set of results, bearing in mind that you have your own services that you do want to promote within the service? Sally?
I can start if you like. Yeah, look, I mean, I think looking at what we do in Roku and what some of our competitors do, obviously different TV OSs do it differently. Certainly from our perspective, we want to ensure that whether we're talking about universal search or whether we're talking about sort of other content discovery features like browse recommendations, we need to ensure that they are relevant for that consumer. I think if we weight it too crazy heavily towards our own services, all that happens is people start to ignore them. You know, we've had feedback from studies that we've done with consumers, and they just say, you know, some of our competitor platforms where they recommend completely irrelevant content to them, they just stop looking at the recommendations. They become kind of almost blind to it. So I think for us, we need to ensure that, yes, they are, of course, great tools for us to drive consumers to our content as well as our partners' content. But you can't go crazy and push too much in the direction of your own service, or it just becomes useless.
Now, those recommendations, though, can be very, very powerful. All three of you have fast platforms that are built into your tvOS. And I want to talk about something that Anthony Wood, who's the CEO of Roku TV, he, in the last quarterly call, he said something that was, I thought, stunning. He said that 80% of the Roku channel views now come from the tvOS UX, not from the app. This is a massive advantage for your built-in fasts, right? This is a great opportunity for you to really drive viewership. Tell us about that. Tell us about how you're taking advantage of that opportunity. Gabriel, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I think, you know, he's right. But if you have a truly independent media platform, you're not guiding people towards your own content, so to speak. And Sally touched on that a second ago. But I think there's proven data that again, the TiVo Video Trends has, but we see it across our pay TV business as well. The better the personalization, the longer the engagement. We're seeing about a 38% increase in engagement, and obviously churn rates follow that. So, you know, I think having built-in fast, I mean, we've just rolled out Sony channels and Stingrays and stuff like that, as well as our own TiVo Plus stuff. But, you know, it's less clicks. That's the big thing. Less clicks, you get to what you want, and therefore you stay in there and you stay watching it. And that's really what we're all looking for, right?
Teresa, how about you? How are you thinking about that with WhaleTV Plus?
So I agree with what the CEO of Roku says. I want to start by saying that at WhaleTV or WhaleTV Plus, we don't own or produce any content. So, of course, you could assume we would have prefer business terms with partners that are on WhaleTV Plus, but we don't own content, meaning we are independent in that way. We are really looking to recommend what the user wants to watch in whatever country that is, in whatever environment that is. So why Anthony Wood saying that and why it's so compelling, it's obviously having the OS and the fast service under the same roof allows you to create so many entry points to the content that you wouldn't have if you don't have the OS. So different ways to do it is whether you take some of the channels and put them directly into the built-in EPG of the TV, whether you build their recommendation row on the home UI, whether you make sure that you're part of the universal search, that you make sure that you're part of the AA Power recommendation. So there's a lot of ways to lean into the content of your own fast service if you also have OS under the same roof. So I'm not surprised about those numbers.
Yeah, and if I can just add to that as well. So absolutely, the other touch points beyond kind of the direct launch of the app is one of the contributing factors to how successful the Roku channel has been. When it actually launched 8 years ago, it was just the app. And that was the only front door into the Roku channel content. That has evolved through all of the methods that Teresa was mentioning. And we're still seeing huge growth. I mean, I think this year it was 82% growth in streaming hours for the Roku channel compared with the previous year. So it's still growing massively. What I'd like to add is actually that's not just the Roku channel when we look at our platform. So lots of the third-party platforms, content partners that we're working with who also have apps on our platform, when they're working with us, they're providing us with really high-quality metadata and artwork and all of those sorts of things. They're also in many of those touch points. And what we're seeing from those guys is that they're seeing a massive uplift in traffic and audience and viewing of their services.
Very good, very good. And just to be clear, one of the key ways that the tvOS does make money is that they share some of the advertising in their fast services. So But this is a standard model that was been used also by pay TV before it, so it's nothing new. So there is a vested interest. Okay, so why don't we do a quick fire round? Tell me one thing, in 30 seconds or less, tell me one thing that you think AI is going to really help with, or is really helping you with, in the tvOS, in its current instantiation. So why don't we start with you, Teresa?
This is just a fancy word that everyone talks about, but I think today, in every OS, the major advantage of AI it's around, and we've been talking about it, the whole panel is about discovery and better recommendations. What we found out, what we learned a lot from AI is how to, because our voice assistance is built and is ChatGPT powered. So I think anyone that has interacted with a TV with the voice option, with the voice feature, in the past years, it felt like you have to talk to it in a certain way, and only if you use certain syntax or certain commands, then you would get maybe the result you want, and then you would need to ask like 4 times until you get to something you actually wanted to watch. Like you would have to be like, show me comedy on Netflix or whatever, something like that. And we learn a lot about, like I said, leaning into that contextual awareness that ChatGPT brings into the sphere, and so that you can just talk in a much more human-like experience with your TV. It's just more like you're talking to a friend. Like you want to watch a movie, you don't remember the name, and you can be like, hey, what was the name of that movie? The features Leonardo DiCaprio. It's fighting a bear in the wilderness, and then the TV will be like, oh, I think...
So voice control is very definitely one of those areas that it's being applied to. Gabriel?
Yeah. Was that a TiVo voice you were trying that out on?
No.
Because I do agree. Because when you do combine AI and voice and personalization, recommendation, content discovery in general, which we do, combine that with good metadata, that's where you get into what you're talking about with, finding movie quotes and tags and things. I think the other thing that we've just rolled out recently and announced is what's called DTS Clear Dialogue, which is actually a completely different conversation almost, but is very AI and machine learning centric, where we, as DTS is part of Xperi, we have an audio expertise in that area. We're able to separate the dialogue from the rest of the piece of content live on the device. So this is a real world problem where people have hard of hearing, they don't want to turn up the TV too loud at night time, blah, blah. So that's the type of stuff that AI, machine learning, and innovation stuff is a great example that actually is practical as well.
Well, I'm not hard of hearing, but I struggle sometimes with the voices are mixed really far back.
Yeah.
Sally, quick.
Sure. Look, I mean, we've been using AI in a lot of our sort of core ML, for example, to date around everything on content discovery that we've been talking about in recommendations, search, etc. I think what we're starting to explore more is how we can use AI across, in other applications across the business. So in software development, in operational efficiencies, in customer support, and many, many areas that we can look at. And look, I think there are also, innovations in that experience that we wouldn't have been able to do previously that we're now looking at for the future because of AI.
Yep.
I can't talk about any of them, I'm afraid. so sorry for that teaser. But yeah, essentially, I think what it is opening up the ability for things that you just wouldn't even be able to do before.
Very good. So let's just go down the line and talk. I want you to talk about how you are using ads in the interface, directly in the interface, and give us a read on how effective they are. So why don't we start with you, Gabriel?
Yeah, I mean, we heard the advertising session earlier. I mean, there's everything from display ads and banner ads and pause ads and everything now, but homepage ads tend to be pretty strong and probably perform 2 to 5 times more than, for example, a banner or display ad from a monetization perspective, but also from a click-through perspective. So, as we talked about earlier, the content-centric user interface we have on the TiVo OS screens, the homepage advertising piece of it is not only for media and entertainment streaming companies to get part of that for movies with Disney, for example, or whoever, but also for the broadcasters to play part of that and get involved in some of those homepage ads. So, you know, that's proven pretty well, and it's also resonating that it's not annoying. Is the initial feedback we're getting, right? So that's one of the.
Teresa?
To try to answer that, sure. The most effective ad unit that we have is also just the masthead, which it's also home UI centric, and on our Whale OS 10, it takes pretty much half of the top of the screen, and it drives a lot of engagement. It can be used by media and entertainment partners, obviously, to lean into their service again, and then since we're talking about engagement, it's all about driving that engagement and then maximizing, obviously, that monetization potential. So yeah, there's obviously many different ad units and ad formats on the OS, and depending also where you access or enter or watch the content. But I think the most effective one would be that masthead unit.
Very good. Sally, this is an area that Roku is invested in very heavily.
Just slightly, yeah.
Are you going to talk about the Roku screensaver? Roku City?
I could if you wish, Roku City, but no, I mean, essentially, like, where Roku is the number one, as we said, in terms of streaming hours, particularly in the US. But increasingly what we're finding is that advertisers don't just want to kind of advertise within those apps, because what happens is you limit their reach. So you limit their reach to people who use, Netflix or BBC or ITV, or not BBC for advertising, but to those audiences for those individual apps. So what we find is that we are now introducing sort of some ad units within the home screen. As we said, we've talked about marquee. We've recently launched sort of video ads within the marquee as well. As you say, within Roku City, we've got the billboard as well. And what we're finding is we ran a recent campaign with Neutrogena where we were able to deliver more than 30% more reach than they could have got if they'd have only advertised with a video campaign within apps. So hugely important in terms of driving reach for advertisers.
Very good. Well, I have one last question. This is the last quick fire round. 20 seconds this time. 20 seconds, remember. Name one innovation that you see now that you think will have a big impact on the TV OS market or your business going forward. And let's start with you, Gabriel.
The continuation of innovation in different ad formats.
Very good. Teresa?
About innovation, well, I think it's just going to be any feature that helps put the TV OS as that consumer front product at home.
Very good. And Sally?
For me, so we've talked a lot already about how what's on the screen has evolved, but the biggest thing that I think is coming is what Teresa was talking about earlier, which is going to be how we interact with that device and kind of the perhaps two-way conversational dialogue that we have with it. And I'm going to stop there and not stand between these people and their beer any longer.
Well, I think we risk a lot by doing so. So Gabriel, Teresa, Sally, thank you very much for your thoughts. Thank you for your attention.